I actually can't throw this down anymore, but it's the thought that counts. About a day ago, it decided to break in half. So probably the next video will be a sketchbook tour or something else. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Also, my nails are chopped. Don't look at them. Shh. Anyways, for this video, I'm actually very, very excited because it's another Arrtx video. Oh, what a shocker. What a shocker. If you have known me for, I want to say almost a year at this point, you know that I am obsessed with acrylic pens. I love them so much, and they actually make me like painting. I was wrapping my head on how I wanted to do this video, like what sort of topic, and a lot of people have asked me for tutorials on how I color. So I decided to do a video on how to color with acrylic pens because that is the most comfortable and confident I am with my coloring skills. Here are probably video clips of my credentials or whatever to show you my work and how I use the acrylic pens. All of them were done with Arrtx pens. I'm gonna open this. Little spoiler, I actually have already opened this for like a week now. I got too excited. I got way too excited, okay? So I've already tested out almost every single one of these pens, but they still work and they're gorgeous. And they're all organized still because I just be like that, I guess, or whatever. It also came with a sticker sheet with all of the different colors for like the side of the pens. I will not be doing that. That is way too much work, but it is a great option for people who do keep their pens horizontal and like look at them horizontally. But I love how these ones are stored. I'll say that. They're so compact. It's insane how compact they are. There's 90 of these bitches in here, and they're just so gorgeous. And I love how they have the color name on the top of them. Oh my gosh. Comparing them to my old acrylic pens, this one I got, I want to say 2 years ago. I put the stickers on them. I will not be doing that. So much work. But they're basically the exact same, right? Besides, oh, wrong side. They have the color number at the top, which is so, you don't understand how amazing that is. I love that so much. And like, they just, oh, look at how easily, oh my god, it just, I don't know, I'm freaking out. Like, I love this. This is one of my favorite pen sets I've ever gotten. This one and the 36 color ones are like my favorite ever. So if you are interested, if you clicked on this video without having any acrylic pens, but you're interested in purchasing them, I would recommend Arrtx. They're pretty cheap for how good they are and how long they last. You can get them on Amazon. They're in my description. But they are absolutely fantastic. So please, they're so good. Although I have used almost all of these already, I haven't actually like swatched them. And I like doing that because it's really satisfying, but it also gives me a good guide on what colors are what. So I'm gonna swatch them for you to also test out like the pigmentation and how easily they go down on the paper. For the swatching process, I'm using the Arrtx sketchbook. I do really like the sketchbook. It always lays flat and it's sparkly and I like it a lot. But I keep all of my swatches in here, besides for the alcohol pen ones because they gave me a little sheet. Anyway, so I'm gonna swatch them just so you know, whatever. I'm gonna do the really pale ones first. Typically, if you know me, I would reorganize this in my personal opinion on how they should be like set in color order, but they have it in numerical order and I really appreciate that, so I'm not gonna mess with it. This one is 05. It's like a neon yellow. I use this actually for anatomy practice, which I'll put up on screen. If you want an anatomy tutorial, I made one or whatever. I'm just going to be putting the color numbers underneath the swatches just so I have a better idea on what I'm looking for. I'm using a Stabilo fine liner. I don't really like these. I'm just using them because I don't want to use my good ones. But I'll be back with all the color swatch, all 90 of them. Oh my god. I'm back with all the color swatches and aren't they gorgeous? There's more on here, but I love these colors. Before we get into how I use the acrylic markers for like portraits, which is mainly what I'm going to be talking about because I don't really draw anything else besides humans, so we're going to be talking about color in general and color theory. I know that's like kind of scary, but it's really not. but also I am terrible with color theory, so I only focus on the basics and what I know and what is easy for me. It's like the 1 + 1 = 2 of color theory, okay? When describing and using color, there's 3 different like principles or elements to keep in mind. There's the hue. It's kind of like the spectrum. Think of like the color wheel. That's the hue. It's typically what we think of like, oh, that's orange, you know what I mean? Then we have the value. This is the perceived light and dark of an object or a full piece. And then we have chroma. It's also saturation. I use saturation way more. I know they're like technically different, but whatever. Essentially, it's the brightness of the color you are using. This one is highly, highly, highly important, followed by this one, and then hue. When thinking about color, we think about hue, and so it being at probably the bottom of the hierarchy of composition and color harmony doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it does. When talking about hue, we typically think of the color wheel, and I am a strong opponent for that thing. I hate the color wheel. I think it's stupid. It doesn't work, and it's, oh my god, okay, let me calm down. To be more civil with my complaints about the color wheel, I'll talk about it. With the color wheel, we've known since like preschool that red, yellow, and blue make up the primaries, and then you have orange, purple, and green, you know, whatever, for the secondaries. I hate that. I've been hating on it since elementary school because every time I've tried to mix like blue and red together, I want purple. And why is it gray? Because those aren't the primaries. Oh my god, okay. The primaries are not red, yellow, and blue. They are cyan, magenta, and yellow. I feel like this fact, okay, well, fact is a strong word, I'll say that. This is all semantics, okay? This is just my opinion and how I think about color. I think it is more important to focus on yellow, cyan, and magenta over red, blue, and yellow because they can create the entire color spectrum, the hue spectrum, rather than the blue, red, and yellow. I'm not saying that cyan, magenta, and yellow are the only primaries. I think the word primary is also useless. It separates colors in such a distasteful and distracting way that people only focus on the primaries and then the secondaries and then what's complementary and blah, 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 blah. When there are multiple different ways to find out complementary colors, there's secondary colors, there's primary colors, there's triadic colors. There's so many different ways to view colors because it's not static. It is ever changing and it's constant. And like everything in art, it is constantly evolving through people's eyes, through people's perceptions, through people's knowledge about it. I'll get off my soapbox, but I'm just really upset. I've been upset since like middle school that public schools and a lot of like college level art classes still teach that red, yellow, and blue are primary colors, when that just leads to annoyance and frustration in art because you can't create the colors you want with those colors. Now, having discussed about cyan, magenta, and yellow, this also interferes with our complementary colors, with our primaries specifically. We've been taught that the opposite of red is green, the opposite of yellow is purple, and the opposite of blue is orange. I'm gonna blow your mind real quick. It's not, these colors I'm using to demonstrate this are not gonna be the full chromatic like saturation of these basic colors. It's just the acrylic pens that I have. Red is not the complementary to green, it is actually the complementary to cyan. This is the closest I'm gonna get to cyan in this color pack, so ignore that. Don't yell at me. Yellow's complementary is not purple, it's blue, and magenta's complementary is green. Obviously, this isn't a one-to-one chromatic, like digital version of a color, but it's the closest I have right now, and I just wanted to show you the complementary colors that I like to focus on in my art. This is not everything to learn about hue, obviously, but it's just what I like to focus on when I'm creating my pieces. Something to keep in mind as well is I'm using acrylic markers here. If you were using just acrylic paint straight out of the tube, alcohol markers, some sort of chalk, any sort of like more malleable material, because we'll get into how acrylic pens aren't malleable and why that can be helpful. There will be no like mixing in this video and all that blah 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 blah. You know, I'm not gonna be doing that. I'm just using the pens straight as pens. If you want to go look up a color mixing tutorial, you go do that. That's not my business. Next on the chopping block is value. I think I might have talked about this in the anatomy video. I'm not really sure though. I think I focused on more linear stuff and rather than shapely stuff. But anyways, we're gonna talk about value. In this, we're going to talk about how light travels kind of more scientifically. This is bare bones, like literally elementary science, because I'm not a science girl, okay? I like pretending I know biology, but really I don't. I just like the aesthetic of it. Anyways, light travels through photons, or in photons, I guess. They are also linear, but this is dependent on how close and how far away the light source is from the object we are focusing on. I just did a little demonstration, little sketch of how I view the light source in a piece. These green dots up here represent where the light source is coming from. This light source is farther away. Pretend I actually showed that it was really far away, or I didn't draw it at all. So anyways, but that makes the photons travel in a linear shape, very direct towards the object. This causes a pretty typical like highlight right here, and a pretty typical shadow, and then a little bit of a cast right here. If we're talking about a spotlight or a very close light source, this is more direct. So it's kind of almost form like a cone of light, you know? So the highlight will be larger, the shadows will be harsher and less, and the cast will be larger. And if we're talking about a diffuse light source, pretend it's like a cloudy day or there's a sheet over a light that's pretty far away. Light bounces everywhere, photons bounce. That's why we have reflective light. Reflective light is very important. That's I really focus on that. But with a diffuse light source, the highlight won't be as strong, the shadow won't be as strong, it'll have less of a harsh edge to it, and the shadow will still be there, it'll still be present, but it's not as concentrated as the other two. The light source also affects the warmth and the cool tones of the color, but we're not going to get into that right now because that's for later. A good way to help with your values is to make your base color for the piece not be a white piece of paper or a black piece of paper, because that adds a whole lot of contrast to the colors that you're using. I would say use a gray, like 40 to 60% gray background to help you understand where the highlights are and where the shadows are. It gives you a more neutral base rather than working against a white piece of paper or a black piece of paper. I guess I should have put this in the hue section, but it's really not that different. It talks about white and black, so basically it's a value. The way we perceive color is how the object reflects or absorbs the colors in their spectrum. With this blue ball, for example, every other color besides for blue would be absorbed, while blue is reflected off into our eyesight. Obviously, with every object, there's going to be a certain hue and tone to it, so it's not just going to be blue. It might be, blue and a little bit of yellow bouncing off, blue and a little bit of violet bouncing off. So, it's not just straight color blue. The last piece of color is chroma/saturation. I try to view it in a triangular form where we have black in one corner, whites in another, and then our base fully saturated color in this corner. With these three, we can make the saturation either brighter or darker with the black, make the saturation lighter with the white, and we have our grayscale right here. In the center is where we get low to medium chromatic colors. If we were to mix all three of these colors together, we probably get something like this. I think this might be a little bit red toned, but we have the darkness from the black, the pigment from this orange color, and the white to make it lighter and appear brighter. I think the most important part about this section is how it is used in a full composition. This is just a quick comparison of how saturation can affect a whole composition. With this one, we can barely tell the difference between the background and the shadows on the person. The neon green human is a lot to take in. The neon red heart is a lot to take in. I mean, this is someone's personal cup of tea, whatever, it's your preference, but I personally like a little bit of desaturated stuff. With this one, the person is way lighter. It still has that green undertone, and it has somewhat of a yellow and green highlight on it. And then there's a highlight with the red heart, which is the focal point, which is pointed out most obviously because it's the most saturated piece in this puzzle. The shadows have a blue hue to them, but they're not overpowering the entire composition, and the background is still a green color, green teal tint, but it's on the darker, it's like here. So that's just the difference. Also, I'm gonna change this to black and white real quick, just so you can see the differences between the two. and how saturation isn't only a standby piece, but rather it can control the whole narrative of the piece. This last section is going to focus on how the medium of acrylic markers affects how we perceive color. I'm going to show the difference between alcohol pens and acrylic pens. Say we wanted to blend these two colors together. Don't mind how old these are. I really need to throw them away. But we can blend them together because they can overlay with one another, right? I probably shouldn't have used really dried out Copic pens, but you get it. I'll just give you like a little colorless blender so you guys don't get mad at me. With alcohol pens, watercolors, any sort of medium that is transparent, you can blend with one another. With acrylic pens, it's a little bit different. They are so fast drying, which is something I really enjoy because I am impatient, but they're so fast drying that it does not allow you to fully blend them. I've seen people blend them how you would typically blend like alcohol markers or paint or any other substance. Medium was probably a better word, whatever. Using paint brushes or their finger, or I'm guilty of licking my finger and doing that. But what I think is so interesting about acrylic pens is how you can use optical illusions in order to create the blending. My favorite way is hatching and cross hatching. If you have seen any of my art, you know that cross hatching and hatching are the only ways that I blend and use color. So I wanted to blend something pretty similar to this again. We have our light blue over here and our like true green right here. There's multiple different ways of mixing the two colors. My favorite way is cross-hatching and hatching in general. So I do a little bit of that, then a little bit of that green. And start with smaller strokes and end up going to larger, more close together strokes. So you can create a gradient throughout hatching. Say I added too much green, I can go over that green with this blue because they're so saturated and pigmented. So if we look at it, I didn't really blend it, but to the eye from a far distance, I have, you know, they're going together in some sort of way. Blend out your eyes, blend out your eyes, blur out your eyes and you'll get it. Also, quick tip for cross hatching. I've been asked a lot on how I cross hatch, and I really only have one tip for you. When you're cross hatching, a lot of people go like this because it's way easier, like, but that's scribbling, that's scumbling, that is not hatching, okay? I'm professional. So if we're gonna hatch, you have to pick up your pen, your pencil, and you have cleaner, more controlled lines. And hatching, go in the opposite direction, go in another direction, overlay it. It's really, that's my cross hatching tutorial. That's my hatching tutorial. When you're first starting to hatch or first starting to use this technique, your hand might be a little shaky, you know, all this shit. If you could just continue, I swear you'll get it down and you'll understand the wrist control of it. Also, I know a lot of people say that you're not supposed to use your wrist mostly with art because it'll eventually wear down your wrist or whatever, and you're supposed to use your full arm. I'm just waiting for that carpal tunnel to hit in because I'm sure I use my full arm, but my wrist is where it's at, okay? I'm gonna show you a different way of blending it. If I put the lighter color down and immediately switch to this green, there's a little bit of blending there, right? But it picks up the paper pretty much, like you can see it, you know, scribbling out. It blends it, but it also, at the cost of your finger and your paper becoming warped and, you know, wrinkled, and I don't like that. I don't like that. So that's why I crosshatch. And I think it gives a piece more texture and more visual interest rather than fully blending everything out. I used to only do this, especially with my digital art, just gauge and blur that bitch. But that adds truly no visual interest in it, and it does not differentiate the different textures that you have going on in your piece. I'm sure there's plenty more notes I could be talking about with this, but this is just some basics. And I am not fully confident in my colors. I don't think I ever will be because color theory is not my strong suit. I really try to understand it, but every class I've taken has not helped me. But at least in my perception, it has not helped me. But these are some of the tips I've learned over the past, like 8, 9, 10 years. This is just my opinion on color. If you want to take it for an hour and realize that it's ass, go ahead. If you want to take this and use it for the rest of your life, go ahead. I don't care. It's your own art journey. This is just hopefully will help you in the long run. I'm not going to be using this full sheet of cardstock. Also, I'm using cardstock. Cardstock is just something I use for almost every single one of my drawings when I don't want to be sketching in my sketchbook. It's just really thick paper, you know, it's awesome. I get it from Walmart, it's pretty cheap. But if you want to use acrylic markers on literally anything, you totally can. You can use it on wood, rocks, glass, I'm pretty sure. I just prefer paper because I am boring. Anyways, we're gonna get into it. I don't really know what I'm gonna do. I think I'm just gonna draw Ellie, which is, if you're new here, it's one of my OCs, by the way. For the sketch, I typically just like choosing colors that I think would go with a composition or any sort of colors I really like. Potentially even a skin tone if I'm really indecisive. But today I'm feeling like a coral and like mint sort of thing. I don't know. I want to do green because I keep remembering when Ellie had green hair for like 2 days. I don't know why. I don't quite know what pose I want to do. But I don't know. I don't think I want to do full body. Just kind of, I don't know, something. I'm moving kind of slow and wiggly. Let me blur my eyes and see if I can see a singular person or anything in there. Also, this is how I create poses from my head. I just scribble until I see something. I think that's boring. We're moving on to the other side. Okay, now I got a better grasp of what I want to do, kind of. Maybe I don't. Okay, that's as good as I'm gonna get right now. But anyways, that's a sketch. I just used 22 on that one. But that's the sketch. I don't really do much more on the occasion if I really want to figure out the lighting, which I might just do right now because I talked about lighting pretty extensively. I'll block it out because I work pretty linearly, and I guess that's a word. And I really want to break out of that. I really want to focus more on the 3D. So I'm gonna switch it up a little bit. I don't quite know where I want the light source to be. Maybe like behind the head. So what I'm gonna do is figure out where the shadows would be. I think it might be the full face inside the hair, but the hair is not full, like fully, not pigmented. What is it? Opaque, I guess. So like can be shown through. Although the pens are very, very pigmented, I also figure out the sort of undertones and hues throughout the whole piece in the sketching phase. With this, I'm debating whether I want to make the shadows warm toned or cool toned. Typically they're cool toned. A lot of people use cool tone shadows. I think I want to do like a minty highlight. Maybe like yellow a little bit. Maybe a little neon green. I don't know, something like that. And then a warmer shadow. I think that's what I want to do. Thinking I definitely don't want it to be this saturated, but just to get me going at least a little bit for what I want to do. I'm still not totally happy with the pose, so I'm just gonna fiddle around with it a little bit more. I'm gonna use a little bit of darker colors, pens, to figure out the certain positions where I want the hair to lie and everything. I just figured out why. It's because I meant to do the shoulders like closer up so you're inside the hair, and I've been doing them super pushed back like an idiot. I'm not really doing as harsh of perspective as I really wanted to, but it's not a perspective tutorial, so I'm gonna justify it to myself. Along with the hues of the shadows and the highlights, I like to figure out the different hues going throughout the skin. Specifically in the face, with a body, I tend to focus more on the red tones on the, like, I guess it would be joints. I don't know, like apexes. It's not really an apex, but it's, you know, it's just like places where there's a lot of movement. There's more saturation in those places typically, at least to my knowledge, along with the color of veins. Maybe some blues, some greens, some yellows. But for this, we're just gonna focus on the face because this guide changed my life a little bit. I tried to focus on this. I don't really look at this anymore. I used to look at it every time I would color, which was almost never, but I try to remember it to the best of my elite ball knowledge, but my brain a little fried. Anyways, so in order to have these undertones throughout the skin, I don't go like full saturation with my undertones. I just give a general basis. With Ellie's skin, they're pretty pale, like very pale, and very yellow, cool toned. So I try to focus that a little bit. As I'm saying that, I'm also using a warm toned yellow, but do what I say, not as I do. That's what it is. So anyways, I'm putting some yellow in those areas. You know, I typically just focus on the yellow on the forehead. When I'm not looking at this, I just focus on yellow, red, blue. Then I add some blush in these areas. With male characters, I tend to make the blue underneath the chin more obvious because of their stubble, or any sort of character that has more masculine features, I guess. But on, you know, more feminine or more androgynous characters, I don't add a whole lot. This looks so cool and interesting. These kind of look like horns. Maybe I'll add horns. Ooh, that could be fun. Sorry, I don't really know what I do. I kind of just go with it. Oh my god, Adam Sandler mention. Anyways, sorry, I got distracted. But anyways, these are my undertones for the piece I'm gonna work on. Obviously there's way more, but these are just like base, whatever. Now I'm gonna work on the actual base colors after these fully dry, which should only take like 5 seconds, but I'm also like paranoid that every time I use something, it's not gonna be fully dry, so I wait a little bit longer. But I'm also very impatient, so I'm just gonna go for it. Anyways, I think I'm gonna start with her hair because I'm kind of confused on what I want to do with her hair. I know I talked about their hair being green, but that was a dream I had when I was 15 and I can't get it out of my head, but I also don't want their hair to be green. I'm just ranting. I don't know what's going on right now. That's a good base color. I'm gonna add a little bit of a darker, more yellow tint to the top of the head, because hair tends to be a little bit darker at the top of the head. Roots and shit, I guess. I don't know. It just adds more visual interest in my opinion. I'm gonna use this color for the highlights on the hair. I think this is a little too warm toned for the color I was thinking of, but I think it would also go well with what I want for the rim lighting. So I don't know, we can go over it. What's so great about using acrylic pens is if you fuck up, you can just go over it. It's really awesome. That's the whole point of color and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. If you don't like what you did on the paper, just go over it. It's fantastic. I love it so much. I really want to add more of that mintiness, so I'm gonna add this color, which I think is way too light, but it's really pretty, so I don't give a fuck. I think this would be also a good rim light. Interesting. What away. I'm gonna do the base of their skin. Like I said, they are extremely pale, so I'm just gonna go over with this like little baby yellow color. Obviously with the lighter colors, they're not going to be as pigmented and as saturated, so we can go over it many times. As you can see, the underpainting is still there, which is what I want because it gives me a better sense of my values. I'm going to do the sweater. However, I'm realizing a problem right now. Since everything is so red toned, this green is definitely yellow. It has a very yellow, lemon yellow undertone. So it's contrasting too hard and it's putting the focal point on this green, which I don't want. So I'm gonna make this less saturated, even though it was just a base color. I'm gonna make this less saturated and more on the cool side. Now you might be looking at this and be like, wow, I literally still can't see anything. And you'd be so right. But I'm gonna carve out the main figure, focal point, positive shape with this like neon lemon yellow. I really just love this like purpley mauve, I don't even know, like this warm gray. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. So I want to add it to the parts of the hair, maybe a little bit around the face. Since the background is so neon yellow, I want to put the background a little bit into the back of the hair, just an teensy bit, obviously showing that it's not, you know, fully coming through, but it adds some interesting light. I really just changed up the light source completely. Well, whatever, I don't care. I don't think it makes actually any sense, but it's pretty, so let me live. But I'm getting a better sense through all these different layers and all these different colors. I'm getting a better sense of where the positive and negative shape land and what sort of colors I want to be continuing to push and to detract from. Since we have this like neon yellow in the background and for a lot of the highlights and it's overpowering the entire composition, I think it'd be interesting if I used a more mauve, magenta-y color for certain aspects in the shadows and in the line art. I'm gonna use this right now. I think it might be too saturated, but I think it'll still give an interesting and better undertone throughout the piece if I end up not liking it. I'm just gonna continually add more and more colors until I like it a little bit at least. The entire process of coloring is just trial and error over and over and over again. So that's why I really like the acrylic pens, because like I said before, they overlay super easily, and if I don't like something, I can just go over it. It's awesome. Oh my god, voiceover cat, so crazy. It's been like 5 days since I filmed this. I wanted to get this out by like Saturday, but you'll see what happens. Anyways, yeah, this is going really fast, so yeah, I'm basically just adding a bunch of colors. I really don't know what I do half the time. I talk about this later, but I basically just like don't think, and I mindlessly just put colors down the entire time I'm drawing. I kind of do that with all my drawings, but like whatever. Anyways, totally off topic, but my Etsy is up again, and I have some new stuff. I think I have a cop car animatic screenshot, a Dan drawing from Fear and Hunger, and then I restocked the red prints, and then there's something else I can't remember. You can guys click on my Etsy or some shit, I don't know. Anyways, I don't know how long this needs to go for. I still got time, what a wait. Anyways, I also continually like flip up my paper, you'll see it, to get a better sense of like what I'm actually looking at, because I'm at an angle when I'm drawing, obviously. I should probably get a tilted desk, but tilted towers, oh my god. I don't like them. They freak me out. Anyways, okay. I think I'm pretty happy with these like base colors. I think the values are a little rough. I think the lights are okay. I think they're saturated and bright enough for what I want to do. But with the darkest colors, I'm not quite sure. Typically in acrylic drawings, I like to either have no black or, you know, do something around it. And if I do include black, have a purpose for it. I'm not really finding that purpose. I don't think it's gonna really help. And this, I think, is the darkest color out of the whole set. It's like this like really dark saturated like plum. I guess it's not plum. It's not super warm toned, but I'm gonna use it as like the darkest points throughout the piece. And I think this is the point where I'm gonna start like rendering. We're gonna put that in heavy quotations because I don't really render. I guess it is rendering. I don't know what I do, man. For rendering, it differs from my base colors because with my base colors, I tend to work around the whole composition. If you watch the anatomy tutorials, like the part-to-part ordering. But for rendering, this is where I hone in on my focal points. I typically start with the face and then halfway through get bored and I go to everything else and then I finish the face. We'll see how it goes. But for rendering, what I typically do is, I don't know, find a section of the face that I want to work on first, and figure out colors I want to use, and just go with it. But I continuously hatch one over the other. This is also what I do if I want to, you know, maybe it's too bright or too dark, I just like tap it out. I really didn't want to use like a really saturated teal because I feel like 99% of my acrylic pen drawings have this saturated teal in it, but I am nothing but a common whore, I guess. Oh my god. Okay, I'm back. Honestly, okay, TBH spoiler, I genuinely hated this drawing when I first did it. I kind of like it now. Like rewatching the video, I'm like, damn, I kind of eat that shit up. Ugh. So like, this is a really ugly phase, but you'll see it look better. I swear. My phone is genuinely overheating, and so I can't be on CapCut for more than 5 seconds without it like throwing a fit. So I don't know what's really going on. If the video looks like shit, I do apologize, but I think we're almost there. I don't know. Okay, anyways. When rendering, I try to pull out all the different colors throughout the entire piece to make it more cohesive. Obviously, there are some parts that I like to keep separate from the others to make it more of a focal point, or it wouldn't clash well. But for right now, this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to explain what I'm doing, or I'm like kind of just sitting there for like 5 minutes in complete silence, and I'm like, oh shit, I should probably say something. So I'm probably just gonna put a speed paint of what I'm doing over this, and then I'll be back. I'll just do like a voiceover of everything But yeah. Hey gang, this is like 12 hours later. I may have had a little hiccup. I noticed as soon as I was like, oh, I'll just, you know, make sure that it's still recording. My iPhone storage was completely full, and it stopped recording about 5 seconds after I said I would put in a time lapse. So, I only did the skin. Thank God I checked. But I was so pissed. But I was like, no, it's fine. I'll just like continue. I'll clear out my phone. And then I got violently ill, which made me even more pissed. So, we're back. I'm just gonna talk about how I did the skin because there's still like some areas I could work on. Since the highlight is just this like neon green yellow, I decided to make this skin a little bit pinker than I typically would. I've also, over the base colors and the like undertones on everything I did last night, I've been mostly focusing on putting the actual skin color that I would use for Ellie on top of it. Essentially, all I've been doing is doing cross-hatching, and then if I think it's too much, I'll tap it out with my finger. I've also been adding like reflective lights. I don't know what color I wanted the reflective lights to be. I think I wanted to do this like pale purpley baby blue. I don't know what it is, but this color, since it is a warm toned blue, essentially, it contrasts pretty well with the cool toned yellow for the highlight. If your highlights are warm toned, your shadows will be cool toned. If your highlights are cool toned, your shadows will be warm toned. I kind of follow that, kind of not. I don't know. I just do whatever colors make sense to me. As for the hair, I don't know what I want to do with it, because like my original idea kind of fell through because I just didn't, I was too stupid to understand the perspective. I'm still gonna add like little strands of almost the original color. This is a little darker, but since these this like purple that I was using for like the liner is so saturated and so much darker compared to everything else, and it contrasts super well with the really bright highlights, this like more so darker color contrasts well, in my opinion. A lot of people have asked me for a hair tutorial, and like I don't know, I feel like I'm pretty okay at drawing like straight or wavy hair. Curly hair is a little bit more difficult for me, so that's why I'm gonna wait until I can like feel more confident in my skills. With this highlight color, I'm mostly just gonna focus it on the top and the sides of the head, so it's more like a rim light. And since the background color is just so incredibly vibrant, I want to calm it down just a little bit. And this more so desaturated lime green, while it is still intense and very bright, it can calm down that yellow. I continually like to carve out the positive and negative shape just so I can have a better understanding of what I need to focus on and what parts aren't as important. This is also kind of just like an interesting thing or something to keep in mind, since shadows and highlights are essentially opposite in their undertones. If you have a softer, more diffuse light source causing the shadows and highlights to be fairly blended in with one another, since you're mixing a cool undertone with a warm undertone, when they mix together on the diffuse light source in the middle, it'll create this like low chromatic, you know, very desaturated gray color, which is boring. And if you look at pictures of like real color shifts and highlights and shadows in the skin, not just the skin but everywhere else, there's going to be a more saturated color in between the two. I'm not even sure if I want to keep the horns in here anymore. I don't really fuck with them. We're gonna get rid of them. If I do liner, I will typically use my Faber-Castell ones. You know me, I'm like a massive glazer for the food nib heart of Faber-Castell. But if I don't want there to be any black in the piece, which I try not to add straight black to pieces unless there's a reason for it, or I just bullshit a reason for it, I guess. I use colored ballpoint pens or felt tip pens or any sort of thin liner I can find. I feel as though this composition is kind of lacking, but I'm just gonna play it off as me just focusing more on the colors rather than the full composition. Even though I just had a whole like spiel during my notes about how color is an essential part of a composition and can ruin it, but I'm just a fraud, I guess. I don't really know. I preach a lot about certain techniques, but in reality, I don't know what I do. I kind of just go with the flow half the time. I think it's more so because I've used art and I've studied art for such a long time. Well, at least basically all my life. I don't want to get like personal in the tutorial or anything like that, but I truly just don't have any other interest besides for art. So that's why I put all of my time and my energy into studying art so I can get better. So over the past, I want to say like 15 years of me doing art, I have gone through a many trial and error in order to figure out what I like in my art, what I don't like, what I can't do currently, what I want to do, what are the steps I need to get to that point. So many failed art pieces, replication and recreation of other people's art or my old art. You're not automatically going to understand everything about color theory right off the bat. You're not going to understand what colors go with one another, which ones have the correct undertone, which ones have a cool undertone, which ones have a warm undertone. It's a continual learning process. As I've said before, color theory and just art in general are not static. Everybody is always learning new information and constantly changing with it. I'll get off my soapbox once more. I just think it is important. I feel like it's kind of beating a dead horse at this point, but everything takes practice to feel comfortable in, whether that be practice in a few years or a few months. As long as you're intentionally practicing elements in your art, I'm sure you will improve. It might be a long journey, it might take a while, but it will help. I'm just gonna try and add some peachy tones and some more pinks to the hair, specifically around the face. This will just make everything a little cohesive. I also don't typically like to add straight white to my pieces. This one is an off-white yellow shade, and plus with it going on top of something that's already had so many different colors underneath it, it's not gonna be fully opaque with the white. I don't try to use pure black or pure white in my pieces. It can really affect the overall composition of it. It might push and pull those mid-tones too far to a certain direction, causing the values of the entire piece to be out of whack. Obviously, I like to put a little white jelly roll in like some places just for like dots or like little doodaddies, I guess. Also, the entire time while I am coloring, I will say my eyes are completely blurred out. I look stupid. I look like I'm just like dissociating a little bit, kind of mindlessly just looking at the colors and trying to fill in the spaces of what I think what color should go there. I kind of do that with all my art. I don't know. I guess if you want a tutorial on my style, just like don't pay attention to it and then just hope and pray that it's okay. And while I do love the opaque nature of acrylic pens, I also sometimes want something a little more sheer on top of my pieces in order to blend colors or to make it look a little bit softer. So my favorite thing to do is use alcohol pens on top of the acrylic pens. With the texture of the acrylic pens on the paper, the alcohol pens really have nothing to grasp onto, so they are way lighter than they would typically be. Like so, this is it on the paper, and then this is it on the skin. It's super light, and it doesn't really add a whole lot, but it can calm down some of those shadows and some of those highlights. If I do use alcohol pens, I try to add it pretty much everywhere in order to make the piece more cohesive. Sometimes I even use alcohol pens as like a line art. And say I do want to line this piece, I think I'm just gonna like clean up some edges. I don't feel like using black with this piece because I feel like it's very expressionist. I don't know. I'm gonna use this. It's the same pen that I was using for the notes, and I just go over it in corners. This is another thing. This is like a little liner thing. Okay, so pretend you have two objects going against each other, right? Right, okay. Let's just pretend there's two objects here, right? So that's like fine, whatever, I guess. But to make it more interesting, do this, right? And then where those two meet, Since they're so close together, the liner can be thinner, but these edges create deeper shadows, creating more variation in your liner, and it makes it look, I think, better. So I try to focus on that a little bit. As you can see, I already fucked up with the pen. So we're gonna go over it with like a jelly roll or something. These pens are kind of weird, and they're like a mixture between a ballpoint pen and a gel pen. It's very odd. I don't know how I feel about them, but I have been using them like crazy, so maybe I do like it, but I just don't want to tell myself I do. Anyways, I'm just mostly filling in the more important areas and the deeper shadows of the piece. I don't want to use it a lot on the hair as it's super saturated compared to the highlight and the regular hair color. Also, I'm totally not going to render the clothes because I'm lazy. I'm just using a jelly roll. I don't really recommend jelly rolls because half the time the ink won't come out, despite it being brand new. I think I have 6 currently, and 2 of them work. So, if there is a better white gel pen out there, I need everybody to tell me about it because I love me a white gel pen, but I don't know which brand is better. I'm just gonna add speckles kind of everywhere. You can still see the shadow of the horn underneath it, but whatever. But this is about what I would do in my acrylic pen pieces. Obviously, this one is a little choppier than usual. I didn't render the clothes or the bottom part of the hair, but just like focus on like this part. If you do want to try acrylic pens, I really do recommend Arrtx pens. This was a 90 set. I'll have a link to it in the description for Amazon. They're one of my favorite things to use currently, and I'm still learning how I want to use them in my own art. But this is just how I currently use them, and I hope this is helpful. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, such night, such blah, blah, blah. And go drink some water. Love you, Pookie Bears. Bye, guys.